Hi Kevin, how you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. Yourself?
I'm not too bad at all. It's early for me. It's like 11 a.m. on a Saturday morning, so I've got my coffee and I've got my orange juice on the go here.
Wow. Okay. Nice.
Yeah, but it's not morning time for you in Singapore. What time is it for you just now?
No, it's just past 6 p.m.
Okay.
I think we've got 7 hours, right?
Yeah,
By my
7 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you've had your day. Your day's coming towards the end.
Yeah, that's right.
And now I'm gonna just get it going again. Well, listen. Thank you so much. I mean, originally when I was thinking of you for the Curator series, I was obviously thinking probably you'd be in the UK, and because obviously you're still studying here in the UK, and I thought like, some of these are going to be over the desk. Some of these are going to be in the real world, and of course with COVID, most of these Curator series interviews have been online so far. But you're back in Singapore just now, and have you been there through the whole pandemic, or what happened? Did you get back?
More or less, I actually came back to Singapore around March of 2020, and I think that was really the point when not just Singapore, but I think most countries in the world were sort of calling people back and closing borders, right? So
Exactly.
I was back home since March 2020, but I briefly returned to the UK in September.
Okay.
For one term.
Okay.
For one term,
okay.
basically. So up to December.
Ah.
But then at that point, I think I was thinking of staying on, but it was around Christmas time when the UK government announced yet another lockdown. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I think maybe I'll, head home.
Just
so I've
get
been back in Singapore since January of 21 until now.
And I mean, it's crazy. We had the same thing here. We had up at the conservatory in Glasgow, we've got students all over the world.
Yeah.
As you know, you've been up to play, and it's like it felt like a puzzle. Like, where is everybody going? Where are they going back to? How are they getting home? How are these journeys being made? When will we see them again? It was crazy, So
no, absolutely, and I totally sympathize with everyone working on all the different institutions, because it's such a logistical and sort of nightmare, right?
It was challenging. Let's say that, for sure. My storage facility, which was one of my wardrobes, it's just been released, back into a normal cupboard, So it was good. It was good. It was challenging, but everybody, touch wood, everybody got where they needed to be safely. And you've had a nice time. Then you sort of reconnecting with family, and
right, absolutely, yeah. Getting to spend time here with family has been fantastic, because for me, having studied in the UK, in a boarding school for what was 7 years, right?
Yeah.
And then coming back to Singapore for 2, but that was national service, so I was living at home, and then going straight back to the UK for Cambridge, right?
Yeah.
So actually having this sort of extended period living at home with family has been lovely.
Yeah, it's nice. It's like the inverted, or it's like the reverse gap year. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Most people desperately try to get away, and then go do their studies, but it's like travel the world or something if they're so lucky. But you've been like, no, I'm gonna go back and have this, like, turn it on its head. It's great.
Exactly.
Well, it's been good for us watching you, because it means you've had some time to produce some lovely videos, lovely recordings, which has been great. Yeah. And for everybody watching, and I'm sure a lot of people know your own YouTube channel and your videos are absolutely beautiful, and you have, in my opinion, absolutely excelled yourself with the recording for your curatorship of Galleria Guitar, a beautiful Bach prelude, and it's really incredibly graceful. It's beautiful. So why don't you tell the listeners and the watchers about the piece you've curated for the channel, which they can watch at the end of this interview.
No, absolutely. So the piece I selected was the prelude from the second cello suite by Bach. I picked this particular piece because at the time of recording, I loved playing a lot of Bach, and I often played the more well-known or the more well-played stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that the second suite, which was something that I did learn in the past, it was something that was long overdue for me to sort of have a revival. And
nice.
it's not something that I think is being played as often.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So, and I absolutely adore listening to it on the cello and the kind of atmosphere it achieves, and tried to, give my best attempt in translating that atmosphere with the guitar.
Yeah. Well, you do an amazing job. I mean, I remember teaching this. I was just, because it's really funny you sent this prelude, because when you came up to Glasgow to perform at the Conservatoire when you were like 12 or something, and you were at Menu in school then, and you played some Bach. I think you played the first suite. I think you played the whole first suite, actually, if I remember, in the concert. I mean, you probably don't remember. You played a million Bach suites, but you know, I we were all sort of watching. I thought, this kid's great, and I was teaching one of my students who was a really interesting student, because he was doing clarinet and guitar as like joint principal study. So he was,
Awesome.
a single line woodwind player with all of what comes with that: orchestral classes, orchestral repertoire, dealing with the reed, all this stuff that they live in that world. And then he was like over to us with the nails and the transcriptions, and like, I was like, you're giving yourself this is a hard job you signed it up for here. But he was playing the second suite as well. And it was really interesting, like, the intervals, the da da dee da 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 dee, all these really clever, expansions of triads and things that Bach does. On the clarinet, they're actually really pretty difficult, but on the instrument of the guitar, we sort of find these things. And I've always thought that that's one of the most sophisticated preludes, because it's one of the hardest ones to sort of navigate, harmonically, really convincingly. But you do, and I mean, I can't wait for people to listen to your performance, because it's just I mean, I keep using this word graceful, but it's it's absolutely gorgeous. I mean, do you have any particular thoughts on your approach to something like Bach? What goes through your head when you're sort of planning your fingering and your interpretation?
Ooh,
easy question.
I think for me, certainly through my background and having studied with Richard, he has his book on the Bach suites. So he has,
does, yeah.
He's walked through, like, sort of being the living commentary on this kind of thing. But I think sort of taking a more independent approach, I've really just tried to stick to what the original medium was and use that as inspiration. So I listened to a lot of performances of it on the cello. And through there, like, some of the more recent things I was thinking about was, I used to be a bit lazy and let the notes sort of simply just sustain through of the triads, for example.
That sounds nice.
I know these are things that we can do on the guitar. But I really wanted to imagine how I could really sort of allow the sound to stretch and travel for, hold as long as possible. Like, as if I was really using a cello sort of bow. So, like, even with the beginning, I was just plucking these three notes and just really letting them sort of hold for as long as possible.
Yeah.
And I tried to keep that approach through the prelude, and wherever necessary, allow for some notes to sort of ring over. But I was trying a more, detached is not quite the right word, but more isolating each individual note and giving them more meaning compared to before. I was sort of just
letting a chord ring. Actually, I mean, it's an interesting thing with the fact that once we pluck a note, we've left it. We don't actually have a foot on a pedal to sustain and then release. We don't have any air to blow through the note to create a crescendo or any more sound. And it's interesting with resonance, is like, I think resonance can often be thought of a lazy thing. So it's like, you've just left that ring in there, and it's maybe not that important in the next chord, so cut it off. So of course those things are very important. But then also,
but if it's intentional,
exactly. If you, and this is where, like, I think if you're a harpist, or say for example you're one of those great Baroque ensembles, and you're thinking about maybe the acoustic you're playing in, and leaving some of these things, the tension that you can create with some of a really sophisticated idea of like closing and opening harmony and blurring lines and sort of stuff, it can make the performance extremely emotional without any of the bearing sort of romanticism that sometimes people don't enjoy so much, let's say, in the Baroque. That was very tactful of me. Did you hear that?
But I think that kind of alludes a little bit to things like having extra basses from time to time. Like particularly with Bach, there's that whole discussion of additional basses, right? And the thing is, when it comes to works like the cello suites, I think a part of the beauty of it is the obscurity of the harmony. And sometimes by placing extra basses, you're actually inadvertently defining the harmony when the point explicit of it was for it to be obscure or being explicit.
Implied, exactly.
Exactly. So it's like, that's why my personal policy has been to always just follow the score, just follow the original score, right? And then I think after that, sort of thinking about it, having played, the piece, it's situational.
Of course. It's really interesting. I mean, then you have like, Johann Solskjaer's recordings on 11-string, and like, they're phenomenal, because they have this resonance and this power behind them, and I mean they're just they're luxurious to listen to, And I mean, it's amazing that we've been gifted such robust music that it can take it, it can take a Jacques Lussier trio or a Brad Meldau album, of improvisations and then little preludes and little pieces on keyboard next to them. Or like one of these Keith Jarrett odysseys, do you know what I mean? Where he's like, just, dismembering a Bach, something, in one of his own improvisations. And then like, obviously then it's, think of our instrument like Galbraith, Solskjaer, contrast that with Russell and Barweco. And these are just phenomenally different interpretations. And they're all equally valid. And in my book, I mean, some people have very strong opinions and sort of say, oh, you can't do that, you can't do this, and I'm like, well, they just did,
Right.
and it worked, or it didn't work.
No, exactly.
I
think that's where the whole like sort of seeking authenticity and the whole HIP thing. About really finding like, oh, what's the right way? And the answer is like, no, it's not quite that, I mean, everyone's performing based on the culture of their time. Of
course, right? And that's very important,
And exactly. So we play a certain way now. People played Bach a certain way then. And, not too long ago, people played Bach in a super romantic way. But no one sort of questioned it. It was their thing. That's what they wanted, how they wanted to interpret it. Right?
I know. I think I've heard a couple of the most hilarious approaches to this I've heard. And I think it was like, to break the tension around it, I heard a really amazing Hungarian violinist who kind of came up against quite an erudite scholar of Bach, and both of these people were on a very, very functioning on a very high level, let's say musically, and one was disagreeing with the other, and the violinist said, I had to go to the hospital last week, and I'm going to have some surgery done on my leg. And, one doctor is going to do some very sophisticated keyhole laser surgery and remove what needs to be out of there very carefully, and I'll be back up walking around really soon. The other guy has got a hacksaw and wants me to bite down on this bit of wood. And you're like, okay, very good. It's like this historically informed practice of like, there are definitely some disciplines in which we've just moved on.
Right. No, exactly.
And we're not. It's like, well, there used to be no anesthetic. You're like, give me the anesthetic,
Right. No, that's a great analogy.
Well, I mean, of course it doesn't work for everything, but it's just sometimes, do we always want to go back and sort of, look through a glass cabinet at a perfect manuscript and try and bring that to life, or do we want to, like you say, be defined by the culture we live in?
Right. I mean, ultimately, there is no perfect manuscript either. Right?
Exactly.
The manuscript in itself is a limiting system to a point.
Exactly. Well, even the idea of writing down frequency as like what we have in pitch is a bit. For me, I'm a bit like, I think we've sort of lost quite a lot of information here in writing this down.
Right. Because ultimately, there's this issue with intention, right? The composer's intentions, which translates through the score, and it's like everyone's intention is different. Unless you can read minds, you'll never
But then again,
get it 100%.
But Elon Musk's probably fixed that already. So now, there'll be the next generation of people in about 50 years. They'll just be going, Like, we won't even
Yeah,
have this.
I'll send you the score through brainwaves or something.
Exactly. Like, and you'll be like, I know exactly how to play this. He's totally, there's no ambiguity. Like, then we'll be looking at people's brains in jars and boxes. I mean, I don't know. It'd be crazy.
Right.
But Bream used. Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, at that point, don't we start to break down a performer's personality and taking that away from the performance, because we always have that thing about composer, performer, and audience, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And then obviously you have a performer's personality of how they interpret a score. But if you really knew what the composer wanted, then you truly become just that medium to transmit what the composer wanted. Then there's no more performer, right?
Yeah, exactly. We do ourselves out of a job. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Oh no.
I think we should revolt against artificial intelligence, or we'll just there'll be the deep fakes that they can do on the internet.
Oh yeah. Oh dear.
So somebody will be able to, like, you'll be playing pieces you never ever learned. Like,
yeah.
On video somewhere.
Dear.
It's crazy. And and Bream had his old hippos, because you said hip earlier on, and I was, for people that maybe don't know historically informed practice, and he had hippos, which were those guys, I think they were always guys, after concerts, who were like historically informed practice police officers, and would be up to him at the end of a concert being like, well, I mean, it's just far too dramatic. You're having far too much fun there playing music. On the planet Earth.
You caught me off guard with hippos. I was like, what's going on there?
It's great.
That's really funny.
It's great. It's in the is it Life on the Road? It's a really nice book about Bream. It sort of follows him around concert tours. Tony Palmer.
Okay.
You might be able to get it. It was out of print for a long time. And it's full of little anecdotes and stuff, and he's pretty candid in what he says. It's great. It's it's a really fun read, But hippos is in there, historically informed practice police officers. Cool. So well, listen. Everybody can listen to and watch your performance of the Bach Second Cello Suite Prelude. There'll be a link to it at the end of this Curator series interview, and it'll be on the channel for everybody to check it out. And I'm sure people are going to absolutely love it. But let's move on from the curatorship just now and just sort of catch up with what's going on with you. Obviously, you were at the Menu in school, which was pretty exalted halls to be walking in, and now you've moved from there to Cambridge. What's it like studying guitar and music at Cambridge?
Oof,
big question.
It's whole different ball game.
I can imagine.
I think, as you know, Cambridge is a university, not a conservatoire. So a lot of the work or the studies I've been focusing on has mostly been academic. A lot of writing, and having spent a lot of time performing in the past, writing isn't necessarily my forte. So a lot of the past 2 years that I've spent so far has been. It hasn't been the smoothest of rides, I have to admit. Okay. A lot of things to sort of reflect on. I think it's important, like, to mention this because it's being in the music industry. Not everything is always going to be like smooth sailing, and like,
that's true.
No, not as pretty as it looks from from the show point of view.
Yeah, certainly not an Instagram photo anyway. Tell you that.
No, right, exactly.
Yeah.
Everything can look very glamorous, but no, I think so for me, it wasn't necessarily the smoothest because a lot of the time I was working on how to improve my writing, a lot of harmony analysis, history, a lot of these different things where. Actually, it wasn't my strong suit. So I felt that I was spending a lot of time, well, not catching up, but certainly consolidating a lot of the knowledge that I was trying to gain, for exams and things. And, I think it was just really useful for me because part of the reason why I wanted to go there was to sort of move away slightly from a performance-based education.
Yeah,
I think
of course.
For me, I was very fortunate that with Menuhin, I got a lot of that already.
Yeah, very young age.
I think for me, I was looking to move away from that. And I saw that, if I had this opportunity with Cambridge to do that, if I were to go to another conservatoire, I would be repeating. Well, not repeating, of course not, because it's a higher level. But we were very fortunate to already have had high level, sort of conservatoire-like education at the Menuhin School. So certainly to shake things up a little bit, I was like, okay, I'm not going to. It's a very naive way of putting it, but if I were to go to conservatoire and mostly do a lot of practice, you know, what difference does that make for me personally between doing that and staying at home practicing? Because I kind of knew where I was at that point on how I wanted to progress practically. So I thought, okay, time is probably better well spent doing more academic things. I still have performance, of course, but the demand and the percentage of that within the course is obviously very different.
Of course. I mean, it's a lot of people that are going to be watching this, I expect will have gone to a conservatoire or a conservatory or, you know, an academy, let's say, for their higher level education on guitar or on music generally. And it is an unusual move to make. If you were, like, say, an orchestral musician, often you're going to want to go to one of the Royal Schools or one of the international conservatories, you know, to help you get that job and get that training, that orchestral training that maybe hasn't been, you know, at a specialist music school when you're younger. You've had an element of it, but you haven't been driven that far. I always think for, you know, a pianist or a guitarist, like sort of soloist, I wonder sometimes, it's a very interesting move that you've made, and it will be one that's quite alien to a lot of people, a lot of guitar players. I don't know how many guitar players have ever gone to Cambridge. You know, I mean,
there were quite a few when I was there. Actually, there were 2 or 3 during my time, which was more than I had expected personally. But it was very welcome to see, and they're all doing very well.
Okay. So there have been a few. I mean, that's incredible, because to me it's just like it's not a pathway that would seem not unavailable, but like that approachable, you know. But it's fascinating. I mean, I used to teach guitar at University of St Andrews, and it wasn't necessarily. I mean, I had some good students, but they were doing a multitude of things. I mean, these people were also studying, you know, astrophysics or like you know the English and all sorts of different things. They were also taking a lot of classes in music, and a lot of them were modular, or they would be part of the first couple of years of an undergraduate degree. But at that time, they weren't really moving forward to a degree in music. It was a different kind of setup. But it's fascinating. It's fascinating to also hear you talk about that transition between like performing all the time at Menuhin and then actually writing maybe all the time when you hit Cambridge. It's a different sort of beast. It's fascinating. You say you would practice anyway. You'd practice anywhere, you know. So it's not like you're losing out on. I mean, you have to be quite disciplined with yourself about the practice, or
And to be honest, the past 2 years, particularly with COVID, didn't quite help with that. So it was unfortunate, but going through these past 2 years, it has dealt a blow with motivation a little bit. So there were times where I was like, I already have a lot of academic work, and practice was something that ended up sort of moving towards the side a little. So, but for example, last summer, when I was back home, I was like, okay, great. I got all the time in the world. I'm just catching up practice, right?
So just knuckle down,
So that's what I ended up doing last year, for example. This year, not so much. I did try to make an effort to spread out the practice a little bit more, make it more consistent, and then next year, hopefully, I can maintain that. But next year is my final year, so it's going to be even more intense.
And what do you do about? I mean, it's interesting. You know, you'd said like you'd achieved so much at Menuhin, and anybody that's followed you as a player. I mean, I remember like you in Spain actually playing, sharing concerts with you not that long ago. Maybe 3-4 years ago. You're a phenomenal player, and you'd achieved a really phenomenal level of technique, coupled with a really sensitive musical approach, in my opinion, at a very young age. So I can see why you'd be like, well, I kind of know what I want to do, and I know what I want to say. So I don't need someone every week, let's say, directing that and trying to sort of sculpt that. But you might need to sort of get that advice or look to that at some point. Do you have a like a one-to-one specific guitar teacher at Cambridge, or do you play to other instrumentalists or singers, or what happens in terms of teaching?
So in terms of the university system anyway, they effectively allow me to decide how I want to be taught. So actually, in terms of teachers, I still go back to Richard from time to time. I still keep in touch with Renee, and I have lessons with him from time to time as well. And brilliant. I think it's very open for me to engage, other musicians however I'd like. There is a great scheme with the music faculty that connects me with other guitarists. So there is a chamber music scheme, for example, and they have for example, last year I worked with a flute player, and we actually had Michael Lewin for one lesson, and we also had an oboist, I think it was an oboist, who happened to be teaching chamber music for some of the wind groups. So we just had another one of those. So it's very open. I think there are lots of opportunities there in terms of getting coaching. Certainly, not forgetting to mention collaboration there is, it's so free because you have all the different colleges, you have all the different chapels, for example. We would be like, hey, do you want to do a concert, just a short one here, short one there? And everyone, in terms of students, music faculty or otherwise, they all come together for, say, the university orchestra, the Sinfonia, and they're all just having fun on top of, whatever academic work we have to do. So a huge part of it isn't driven necessarily from the source of having to perform, right? Because if you're in a conservatoire situation, the stress is always there. We have to perform. Here, people are doing it because they voluntarily signed up to do it. So I think because that discussion of, is it a passion or is it turned into something that, it's work, and then you find yourself less passionate about it. I know there's this sort of fine line, and I think it's nice that you get to connect with, a huge variety of people within a community like Cambridge, right? And it sort of rekindles that childlike, spirit.
Well, I'm delighted for you in terms of this transition from, like a performing arts school over to Cambridge, because it sounds like you're just loving making music when you all get together, like you said, collaborative, and it's just enjoyment. It gets your heads away from the books and the analysis, and it allows you just to enjoy music again. It sounds like it's an incredibly positive experience.
No, it has been, absolutely. And just to quickly add, I think like it all sounds great, like it sounds perfect, like the path laid out and everything. But I think it was also just ultimately, I was at a point before Menuhin where, I was within this bubble of Singapore. I came to Menuhin, and then I was like, wow, there's so many things. I thought I knew a lot, right? But then obviously you don't know what you don't know, and then you go there and like, wow, my world has sort of, my eyes have widened. They've opened to so many different things.
Yeah. And
I think I was looking for that sort of similar sort of epiphany with Cambridge, and I think that certainly has happened with Menuhin. I think there's only so much you can do academically at such a young age, right?
Yeah.
And having gone through the GCSEs and the A levels for music, like one thing I can tell you for sure is that the A level music course did almost nothing for me once I went to Cambridge.
Yeah, it sucks.
Except for one or two things, none of it was actually really that relevant.
Yeah, I can imagine. We've the same situation up here in Scotland. The actual, really what people do at school, at high school, it doesn't really set you up or really help you for the idea of going into the first year at conservatory level, and certainly won't for Cambridge.
Right.
No way.
So I was also like thinking like long term, like I should definitely need a little bit more like academic like background,
rigor,
so that so that later on it'll be very, very useful. So it seemed like the right move to make.
When you were very lucky, it's funny when you said, like, Singapore, menu in school, Cambridge. It's like, it's I can't not chat to you, Kevin, without mentioning your father and how much he was just. It was. I mean, I followed you since you were really young. With like appearing on YouTube and met you at festivals when you were over in Germany and stuff. Like and menuing, you were coming up to Scotland and stuff, but. Your dad was never that far away, and he was so supportive of what you wanted to do. And it's like, people have I think supportive parents are essential, like, for this. I mean, they're not. I mean, I've said essential, they're not. I mean, I know people that have excelled without that, but maybe,
they play such a huge part when they are around, aren't they?
Exactly. And look, to be honest, like, when you play and where you're studying and this journey that we've talked about, you've managed to get there because so many things have been taken care of at a young age, which, you probably have to say, thanks, Dad. Like, occasionally, I'm sure you do. But, like, I mean, what was he like? I mean, as a force for you when you were growing up? I mean, he actually taught you really at the very beginning, right? Yes.
So at the very beginning, I think he was very supportive in me having a sort of musical education. When I was 4, he actually sent me for violin lessons.
Nice. You've never forgiven him. You've never forgiven him.
No. Oh, well. I don't know about that. I mean, I had violin lessons for 3 months.
Yeah.
And then the violin teacher kicked me out. He actually kicked me out because he was quite elderly. I don't actually remember this, but apparently I was running around a lot, and the teacher is like, I've got no time to babysit this kid, right? So out he goes. And then my dad was like, okay, you know what? Let me give it a shot.
Yeah, okay, I'll try.
So already from the get-go, he was a very, very supportive, to even think about, taking up that process of teaching me guitar.
Stepping in.
Yeah, so it was Suzuki violin when I was 4, and then he thought, is there a good Suzuki guitar? So he ended up using what was actually very early material of Suzuki guitar at the time. We weren't following the method, by the letter, but we used that material because there was at least some sort of a progression that was laid out. I mean, he's not a professional guitarist, but he learned, he was self-taught since he was young, and he enjoyed doing that a lot. Yeah. So we made that into a family bonding thing. My dad and I would play together. My mom would be behind the camera, and we should be recording videos of us. Nice. Back at our old place. So that was really really nice.
It is amazing. It makes it such a normalcy. It's just like, okay, this is what we do, and it's so lovely, and it's just like, there's nothing sort of like, now I have to go off and do this, and it's like a bit of a chore. It's like, well, I'm sure occasionally it was a chore.
Yeah, no, it did feel like that from time to time, but I think that's part and parcel of the whole progress. Process is the word I was looking for. Of developing what is the discipline. I mean, it's not just practicing an instrument, but doing anything in life, we do need to practice, and if we don't keep it up diligently, we won't make as much progress as we potentially can. So I think there were times when I was like, oh, Dad, I don't want to do this, but he was like, no. He would nudge me and say, no, give it a shot.
Yeah.
I'm absolutely, like, I'm so thankful for both my dad and my mom for being there to just be like, just pushing me when I needed it. And I still thank them now for that.
That's good. That's excellent. I know, and they just thought they'd got rid of you as well. They thought, he's off to Cambridge, that's great, we can have our house back, we can do it. And then you arrive because of COVID, and you're like, finally I get time to practice. And they're like, oh my god, we thought we'd got rid of him. We thought we'd stopped hearing the entire guitar repertoire, so I love that. It's like, I'm back. So, and then another thing I want to touch on with you, because I think, like, it's again, it won't be unique. I'm sure we can find examples of it, but you've had to sort of put your career, let's say, a little bit on hold, and also your learning and everything with the national service in Singapore, because the last time I met you, we're in Spain, and you're just about to embark on this, and you're sort of playing really, really well, and it was just, And I was sort of thinking, oh my God, that boy's away to do 2 years military service. How is he going to, I'm naively, I'm probably like, what's he going to do with his nails? Like, you have to cut them off, flick, and all this kind of stuff. And like, what happened? I mean, obviously you kind of slightly disappeared. Not completely, but
No.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. So after we met in Spain, I was in Singapore, around Southeast Asia, doing a little bit more performing because I was like, okay, my time is almost up. So I thought I'd do a bit more performing. And then immediately I came back. A few days later, I went straight in, heading into what was the basic military training. And at that point, my nails cut off.
Yeah, gone?
Yeah, gone. Completely gone. For a few months. But I think at that point it was just very, very difficult because of all the training. Mm-hmm. I was just too tired to think about anything else. Yeah. I was allowed to go home during the weekend, but I just rest. And I tried to play a little bit, but I have to admit, I think by the time I hit the end of the basic training, which was maybe a 2 or 3 months period, it was quite a shock because I remember at the end I was like trying to play and I was like, wow, I feel like a beginner all over again. Like my fingers felt so tense. At one point I was like, oh my gosh, I don't recognize like these hands. Are they my hands? They don't feel smooth at all. But once I finished basic training, I got posted to a unit. I was very fortunate to have superiors who gave me some flexibility that I could actually bring in my instrument after a point, and I could start to grow nails again. I got permission to do that, and they understood my situation, and and the particular role I had did allow me some flexibility from a day-to-day basis to have some practice whilst I was in camp, because I was required to stay in camp and I could only go home during the weekends. But I think I was very fortunate. Again, I have my parents to thank for this. Throughout this entire period, I was, maintaining the YouTube channel, which has done me so many wonders.
That's a great channel.
It's given me so many opportunities. Back when I was a kid, just for local performances. Having even gone to Menuhin, I wouldn't. They were the ones who reached out to me through YouTube. I wouldn't have gone to Menuhin without that. And certainly through the national service, I think it was a way for me to at least sort of maintain and give myself some goals to be like, okay, hello world, I haven't completely disappeared. This is what I'm up to in the meantime. And I would record at home during the weekends. And I think the other thing with national service was that taking these 2 years away from what was the UK scene actually gave me a bit of perspective. It gave me a bit of space to think about where I was. Personally, I think if I had, gone through these 2 years and I felt like, no huge difference was made in my life, and I was like, meh, guitar, there wasn't, maybe it wasn't the right thing for me if that was the case, but I was like, if I went through the 2 years and I, had this yearning for guitar, maybe, I'd come out feeling even stronger and ready to go to the next thing. So I think that's a very simple way of putting it, but I think, it's certainly what, just to put myself through the test of, is this really what I want to do? Because it's a huge decision to make anyway, right?
Yeah, of
And
course.
a lot of my friends, bless them, they carried on to, say, the Royal College of Music in London, and that's a very stressful environment, right?
Unbelievable.
So, during the national service, that's stressful in itself, but it's also it was also a breather in its own way.
Yeah, exactly. Just gives you a little bit of time to sort of take stock, and also probably because you're doing completely unrelated things. With the training before you got sort of posted to the unit and stuff like that, you would be doing like physical training and things that are completely not really so related with music and the guitar.
No.
Yeah, right. So I mean, in a way, like sometimes when someone forces you to do something like that, you do get that moment of, okay, I actually quite like what it is that I'm good at or what I do, and my energy has to be there. You can stop. It's easy to feel a certain sense of, I think resentment's too strong a word, but people get tired even at a young age. I mean, you'd achieved so much so young, and people do get tired. There's a sense of fatigue, and even though I know you were doing something physically very stressful in that time, that physical stress, as you say, you went home or you came back to where you're staying, and you can't practice. You're exhausted. Your body's probably exhausted and wrecked. So your mind, you have to think about these things, and it's great that it had that type of an effect on you, and it didn't have an overly negative effect, because obviously, when
I'd be lying if it didn't have. Yeah, I'd be lying to say that if it didn't have a negative effect at all.
Of
right?
Course,
it's not all flowers and roses, and like,
yeah.
I mean, I know that I would be doing myself a disservice if I didn't have a positive outlook and try to make the most of what the situation was like. So definitely, so just saying, okay, this isn't ideal, but how do you deal with it, right? And as you rightly mentioned earlier, sort of taking stock of what's been happening, because certainly as a young music student, certainly in a place like Menuhin, where the impression that a lot of us may have as young music students is that, okay, we're going all in with this, maybe being a soloist is like my career choice. Obviously, we know that that's only like a small percentage of what the entire music industry is like, and and the biggest thing for me during national service was to really bring in the message that there's more to life than just music. Right, which is really, really important. If we're in conservatoire all day, we're just thinking, oh, do I have time to practice? What am I going to do? I mean, like, yes, sure, that's important and everything, but don't let that control you and your life, because if you need to do more pragmatic things, it's like, oh, what do? I have no idea how to do certain simple things in life, right?
I've met plenty professional musicians that are a lot older than both you and I that can't tie their shoelaces. So there you go.
that kind of thing. So exactly. I think that's part of that 2-year breather that I was talking about. It really puts certain things into perspective, which was really, really useful. No, it's amazing. And just like I have a lot of admiration for you for been able to speak so coherently about it, emotionally and sort of intellectually, because it's a lot of people that could have been sink or swim, fight or flight. Do you know what I mean? It could have just been too much. It's like even just thinking about it. If I take these 2 years off, I lose all my momentum. No one knows who I am, and then it's just like little negative thoughts get in there, and then you cut your nails off on day one, and it's like I mean, I know that probably to people that aren't guitarists watching, and they're saying, what are these guys talking about, cutting their nails off? But it's like you don't do it anymore when someone does that, So I'm in a lot of admiration for your psychological approach to understanding this experience, and always having that positive energy coming out of it, because that's obviously essential, and a lot of people would have struggled. Yeah, no, it's tough. I think ultimately is also a part of it for me was certainly detaching myself a little bit from what happened during national service, right? Not taking everything that happened there like super personally,
or too seriously.
You have to take certain things pretty objectively, and like this is not really who you are, what you're set to do. This is just something that you have to go through over the next few years. Yeah,
amazing, well done. So when do you think that you will get back to the UK? I mean, obviously you've got one more year at Cambridge, which would probably start in October or late September.
That's right. So that's the plan. I should be returning in October.
Okay.
And nice. I would love to be able to stay through for the full year.
Yeah, for the full
uninterrupted.
Yeah. Well, fingers crossed. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's always a bit hit or miss, but the planning in another higher education establishment here, I'd say the planning looks that's the general idea, is that hopefully if the winter is balanced, and I mean, we're still going to struggle with COVID this winter, there's no doubt about it, but fingers crossed you're able to stay right through to graduation.
Absolutely.
And that's amazing. And then what I mean, I know it's too far ahead, but is there anything on the horizon for you? Have you got any plans after Cambridge, or are you just so focused? I mean,
Oof.
Would you like to stay in the UK, or would you like to go back to Singapore or South Asia? Where have you got any ideas where you'd like to end up?
Okay, so let's put it this way. A lot of my attention will be put into completing my Cambridge degree and at least making sure that I survive the end of it first before anything else, right?
Come out unscathed.
But then after that, I will be looking to pursue further education. This one is still a bit up in the air because I'm considering where to apply and things like that. In fact, you know, this is around the time that I need to start considering these things.
Crazily enough, yeah, you need to be thinking this whole year ahead. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. I'm currently leaning towards the States, I think.
Okay.
But in terms of like the UK is almost like my second home because I've spent like more than half of my life in the UK in its different forms. So whenever I leave, there's always a part of me that's still there, and I always look forward to coming back. So I would definitely visit at some point. That's no doubt about it.
Maybe like the first week in July, sometime to come to a little Scottish island and play a little concert. All right. I would be into that. I think I could make that happen. That would be good fun, because we don't want to lose you just to America completely.
I remember that the Menon School has a regular sort of tour in Scotland.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So I was very fortunate to have been a part of that once or twice, and we went to New Lanark. Does Blair Athol ring any
Blair Athol, Perthshire, it's lovely.
So places like that, and I think we even got to play the Royal Overseas League once in Edinburgh.
Yeah, in Edinburgh in their house. Yeah, I mean it's nice. I mean even with New Lanark, it's a fascinating place, like a sort of socialist project in Scotland, like, in the 1800s. It's an amazing place.
But it was such an awesome opportunity for me to be able to see a little bit more of what Scotland is like. So it's absolutely beautiful. I can't wait to come back. And then stuff. Definitely I will be back in the UK at some point, but I'll be moving on to the US, and then longer term, one of the things I would like to do is to be based back in Asia. Singapore definitely for sure, but to sort of just help raise the general playing field. I think
that's great.
There are a lot of pockets of guitar players sort of embedded throughout Southeast Asia, but I definitely like to help with whatever efforts are being made to make it more of a community and sort of raise the pedagogy around here, because a lot of the foundations here have been teachers who are self-taught and then trying to teach people along the way, and that's great. I mean,
and having some success with that, having a lot of success with that, actually.
Because a lot of it has come through passion, and it's really great to see that flourish. But we also need some people who, have received some sort of formal education with regards to helping the scene thrive.
Give it a backbone and make it robust. If one person who had all that drive and that energy, just moves on or gets too old, then actually there's a network of people, and I've seen it start to establish itself. A little bit in Malaysia. I've seen it establish itself in different countries. I've seen there's a network of students who are all sort of fairly equally educated, and they're all sort of bringing, like you say, a pedagogical sort of level. But that's a fascinating idea. I mean, obviously, the GFA isn't really that in America, but, it does do quite a lot of educational things. And, of course, they will have, mixed success throughout the whole of North America. But, I mean, you could have some sort of federation and resources available and network. And it would be a very interesting thing. That's a really fascinating ambition that you have.
Absolutely. And as part of these efforts, hopefully have streamline some connections between Asia and the Western part of the world, and then having exchange and things like that. I think that's just really important, because we definitely need more exposure here to raise the bar.
Yeah. Well, you have actually done quite a lot for that, probably unknowingly, just from when you were very young and supported by your parents, and having such a visible presence on YouTube and just generally. And it's just a delight. Thank you so much, Kevin, for chatting to me today, and for putting together such a beautiful performance of Bach. It'll be on right after we finish up here in a couple of minutes, and I think people are going to love listening to it time and time again, because it's really exquisite. Well done. And I wish you all the success in this final year of Cambridge. You'll just nail it. You'll be fine.
Thanks so much, man. No, huge pleasure on being thank you so much for having me. It's a huge pleasure to be on board.